A real crime. In a series of podcasts, I want you to travel down some lonely roads with me. These are the roads I traveled with families who never got to say goodbye to loved ones. These family members were fated to live the rest of their lives waiting and wondering. I wrote these stories when I worked as a reporter for the Charleston Gazette. Thanks, as always, for joining me today. When I began this series, I said I would start with unsolved murders. I also explained I would examine cases that include convictions. These are cases I think deserve additional attention. Today, my attention turns to a man who served as a pastor all of his adult life. The arc of his life story is long enough that I broke it into two sections. As you will notice, I also put in chapter titles that I hope will be helpful. Episode 12, Part 1, Michael Flippo. The Right Reverend James Michael Flippo always had a burning desire. He had a burning desire for a more beautiful house, a better car, a bigger church. He let that burning desire loose. He burned his cars, his parsonages, his churches. He burned one of his homes when the three sons were small. His wife and her younger sister, who lived with him while she went to college, awakened to the sounds of smells of the fire. The two sisters managed to scoop up the sleeping boys who were dressed in their pajamas. With no help from Reverend Flippo, they escaped the burning house and stood in the snow and ice. When Flippo burned one of his churches, he always had a list ready of the improvements he wanted. He met with his faithful followers, who immediately set to work on fundraising to build the new church Flippo envisioned. Speaking of fundraising, Flippo had a special talent for that too. The Right Reverend stood behind at least two fundraisers for members of his congregation who were seriously ill. Flippo helped himself to those accounts. He left 24 cents in one so that he did not have to go through the obvious step of closing the account. That might alert someone to the fact that he had stolen the money good-hearted people donated. They might ask pesky questions. He could have gone on to a long career of embezzling from his church members and burning his way to glory had he not been arrested for the brutal beating death of his devoted wife. Police found her with bits of her broken skull embedded in her brain. At first, they accepted Flippo's story that a person who had been stalking him for weeks managed to find the couple on a remote path to Cabin 13 at a state park. Flippo told police he had also been attacked. His wife's blood and brains had been splattered not far from the bed. Flippo had some scratches on his legs. Apparently the stalker meant to do a thorough job on Flippo and started with the legs. The stalker, bent on finding his target, Flippo, forgot to bring a weapon with him. The stalker had to rely on using a piece of firewood at hand in the cabin. The stalker put the couple under a strain. Without being seen, the stalker entered their Nitro, West Virginia home and placed a threatening message inside. Someone mangled the waterbed where the couple slept. The stalker left a message on the phone. It was 7 days to the end. Flippo told members of the Nitro Fire Department he was being stalked. Members of Flippo's congregation even stayed with the couple to watch over them. Flippo thought a fun getaway would be just the ticket to get their minds off this threatening presence. But of course, the stalker would recognize the 1991 green Cadillac DeVille Flippo drove. He switched cars with a friend to throw the stalker off the trail. This car was a red Chevrolet Camaro convertible. On the way, he even played a Beach Boys tape in the car, so the couple could imagine they were taking a happy trip to a safe place. What could go wrong if they rented Cabin 13 with no phone at the park that was closed for the season? Cabin 13 was at the end of a row of cabins inside Babcock State Park in Fayette County. The road that ran by the cabins was rough, to say the least. Usually, people on mountain bikes or someone driving a maintenance truck for the park were the only ones who used the battered road. Beyond the cabins, the trail was completely wooded and uninhabited. Cheryl Jewel Flippo loved her husband from the time they met as teenage neighbors. They married young. She took her roles as a pastor's helpmate, a wife, and a mother seriously. Her siblings, who still mourn her, said she was the essence of kindness. Besides always wanting better cars, homes, and churches, Flippo enjoyed spending money. He was never good at keeping track of how much he spent or what bills the five-member family had to pay. The burden of balancing the family finances fell on Cheryl. In frustration, she once cut up Flippo's credit cards. After she was murdered, people appointed to examine the church's finances discovered that Flippo used church funds constantly. Only his name appeared on several accounts, including one dedicated to pay medical bills for a child's organ transplant. He also had many bank accounts around the area where they lived. He transferred the money among them as he needed. The committee also discovered that items like the paving of the church parking lot that everyone believed had already been paid for had not been paid before at all. They examined as many pieces of paper as they could in an effort to patch together the money maze. But in frustration, they had to label one account as a mystery account. His parents even contributed money to the church in an effort to plug all the leaks their son created in the funds. What police found inside Cabin 13? The Flippos arrived at Cabin 13 on a Monday night, April the 29th, 1996. Early the next morning, in a panic, Flippo called 911 from a payphone. He was so upset, he told the operator, that he could not remember his name. He was barefoot and wearing only a torn and blood-stained pair of white underwear shorts. A few minutes into the call, though, he told the operator he remembered. "I'm a preacher. I know who I am. I'm a preacher." A little after 2 a.m., Charles Bryant with the Fayette County Sheriff's Department arrived at the park. Flippo was standing by the payphone. Flippo also told Bryant someone must have stolen his green Cadillac and his car phone. Bryant took down all the vehicle's identifying information and immediately got on the police radio. He told other officers to be on the lookout for the stolen Cadillac. Maybe whoever attacked Flippo also stole the car. With Flippo in his police cruiser, Bryant proceeded to Cabin 13, where he saw a red convertible parked outside. Flippo told Bryant he had no idea who the car belonged to. It was raining as Bryant approached the cabin. He later reported the ground was very soft. He saw no footprints but his own. Approaching the front porch with its light on, Bryant saw no footprints on the porch. When Bryant stepped inside, he found no footprints or any water on the floor from rain. He saw Mrs. Flippo lying between the bed and a wall, her body bloody and battered. Bryant left the cabin and escorted Flippo, who was walking toward the cabin, back to the cruiser. He began sealing off the area and welcomed 2 paramedics who were just arriving. He cautioned them not to disturb the scene. One paramedic came inside to examine Mrs. Flippo, and one paramedic examined Reverend Flippo outside. Later in time, an assistant medical examiner would commit to writing the state of Mrs. Flippo's body. She had suffered numerous fractures to her skull, so severe that her brain was exposed and the membrane around the skull was ruptured. Dr. Zia Sabet counted at least 7 severe blunt force injuries. One on the left side of her head measured 6 to 8 inches. Her cheek was fractured. A portion of her left ear was missing due to the force of the blows she suffered. He also found bruises on her right and left forearms and fractures to her hands and bruises to the back of her hands that she received while she tried to fight off her attacker. Police found no evidence of forced entry to the cabin that consisted of a small combination bedroom and living room area with a fireplace. The cabin also contained a bathroom with a shower, a small kitchenette, and stairs that led to a small open loft area. Fayette County Sheriff's Deputy Garland Burke arrived at a little after 3 a.m. and started to make a list of all he saw in the cabin as he processed the crime scene. Another deputy also helped him by taking photographs. Burke found large amounts of blood on the mattress and one pillow. He also found 2 blue nylon straps near the victim's body and a brown wood-handled long blade butcher knife lying on Mrs. Flippo's arm. The knife, though, was not in her arm. Later, the autopsy would show that Mrs. Flippo had no knife wounds. Near the bed, he saw a split piece of firewood and a round piece of firewood. He also found a small piece of duct tape near the victim's body. In the cabin's bathroom, he found a roll of duct tape on the windowsill. Someone soaked blood up from the floor and transferred it to a pillow and the mattress. As he examined the room more closely, Burke believed that someone wanted it to look like Mrs. Flippo died in the bed, not the floor. He saw a rocking chair that had been turned over, with fireplace utensils placed under the chair. As he examined the overturned chair, he could find no evidence on the floor of a struggle. He began to think the chair was turned over and the utensils put under it after the victim died. In a pair of gray pants, Burke found Flippo's brown wallet. Inside the wallet, he found 2 blank checks on the Landmark Church's account. He found several credit cards and a voter's registration card. One of the credit cards was on the name of one of Flippo's sons. There was a check written to MasterCard for $351. The check was drawn on the Landmark Church's Bank One account. There was also a cashier check from One Valley to the West Virginia Credit Bureau for $590.06. This was also drawn from a church account. He found a note in the left front pocket of the pants with the name Raymond Schumann on it. This note indicated they had a conversation Monday, April the 28th, 1996. Account, interest-bearing account, keep interest for use, Flippo wrote. At the time, Burke had no idea who Schumann was or what this interest-bearing account was all about, but he soon would. Burke and photographer Deputy R.C. Godsey saw a briefcase on a table near the victim's body. Nothing on the outside of the briefcase gave identification as to whom it belonged. The briefcase was not locked. Inside the briefcase, they found a collection of photographs of the man who would later be identified as Joel Boggess. In time, Boggess would testify that he and Flippo were on their way back from Lewisburg, West Virginia, and talking about baptism. Boggess testified that on April the 27th, 1996, the two of them turned into Babcock State Park. He said Flippo baptized him there. The pictures captured the moment. According to Burke's inventory, the Flippos brought with them to the cabin a rainbow study Bible, a green cloth-covered Bible, a book entitled In Honest Love, some letters, a pack of cards purchased at Rite Aid, and food. In time, one of Cheryl's sisters would verify her sister's handwriting in the letters. Some of the letters were written on stationery decorated with flowers and this verse: "One little flower can gladden the heart as its fragrances and beauty unfold. One little prayer can brighten life's path with riches and blessings untold." Another floral page had this verse: "Thank you, God, for quiet places far from life's crowded ways, where our hearts can find true contentment and our souls fill up with praise." In a letter, Flippo wrote to his wife, "I have your best interest at heart." Victim or suspect? From the moment he made the call for help, Flippo was considered a victim. Police listened as he told his version of events. In the clarity of hindsight, his call for help is revealing. A transcript of the phone call became 30 double-spaced pages of typing. The transcript is included in a response to the appeal Flippo filed with the State Supreme Court of Appeals of West Virginia. The first person to answer him was a Bell Atlantic operator, who then connected Flippo to Fayette County's 911 center. An operator at the 911 center also began to talk to him. He could not remember his name, he told them, but as they talked, it came to him: Mike Flippo. He had no idea where he was, he told the helpers, but he could see the word office on a sign. The county operator asked him if he could see the grist mill. Yes, he could, he said. That helped emergency responders locate him. He was looking at an object that's been photographed thousands of times. A picture of the Glade gristmill can be found in gift shops around the world, especially as the mill looks against colorful fall foliage. The operators kept urging him to stay where he was so that responders could find him. He told them, "He hit me with a log." Whoever hit him also hurt his wife, he said. "Her hair is so beautiful. It has blood in it," he said. "Please help me, God. I'm so scared," he cried into the phone. "I love her so much." He told the operators he tried to wake his wife. When he could not wake her, I ran out the door. After a paramedic took him to Plateau Medical Center in Oak Hill, West Virginia, to be examined, he was still considered a victim. He said his attacker hit him so hard on the head that he passed out. At the hospital, staff took pictures of him. The medical personnel who examined him described his 2 head wounds as small. One was on the front of his head, about the size of a $50. One was on the back of his head, about the size of a quarter. Then they looked at his legs. People in the emergency room began to question his injuries that produced very little blood. But after he examined Flippo, State Medical Examiner Erwin Sofer was adamant the leg injuries were self-inflicted. Flippo told police that after he and his wife went to bed, he saw a person lying between the bed and the wall. This person, who was wearing a toboggan to cover the face, also had a rope. Flippo said he was about to warn his wife when the person hit him in the head with a piece of firewood. This blow knocked him unconscious, he told police. When he came to, Flippo said he found a person sitting on his lower legs, cutting his legs with a knife. This person, who smelled of cigarettes, also threatened to cut his penis off. The next time he came to, Flippo said he felt his wife's hair and found it bloody. He could not wake her, but he said her heart was still beating. He went for help. After he returned to his Nitro home, Flippo spoke on the telephone with one of his sisters-in-law. He told her he just spontaneously decided to go to Babcock on the same day they arrived. Police soon discovered Flippo made a reservation with a park employee after he and his friend Joel Bogus visited Babcock for the second time. He then made the reservation for the most remote cabin in the park. The photographs. When he examined Flippo's gray pants, Burke found a customer receipt from Photo 1 dated April the 29th, 1996. Reverend Flippo picked up the photos shortly before he came to Babcock State Park. The pictures were of Joel Bogus. On April the 20th, 1996, Bogus had been at Babcock, and a park employee asked him to leave. Bogus was driving his red Camaro at a high rate of speed. This was 9 days before Reverend and Mrs. Flippo arrived. The park employee wrote down all the identifying information for the car. This was the exact same car police found parked in front of cabin 13. At first, Flippo told police he drove to the park in his green Cadillac and had no idea who owned the Camaro. He must have forgotten he traded vehicles with Bogus to throw the stalker off the trail. Flippo also was with Bogus as they drove through the park. Flippo would later explain that Bogus had been considering getting baptized. They decided to perform the rite at Babcock. They probably did not realize what most visitors to the park know. The park is famous for having some of the coldest water anywhere. Thank you again for joining me, and thank Tommy Sonner for this recording, and I'll hope you'll join me next week for the second part of Reverend Flippo.